All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our live Mother's Day reading event. We're so happy that you're here. We're going to get started with the readings in just a second. We're going to give people a few more minutes to start trickling in, and then we'll get started at about 5:05. Thank you so much. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So once again, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here to celebrate Mother's Day with us and to tune in as we honor all of our amazing mothers and mothers everywhere on this very special weekend. So we're going to kick it off with a short sonnet, a short little poem that was used by Christina Rossetti to open a book of her own sonnets. And of course, this one is going to be used to open our event. And this one is called Sonnets Are Full of Love, and This My Tome. Sonnets are full of love, and this my tome has many sonnets. So here now shall be one sonnet more, a love sonnet from me to her whose heart is my heart's quiet home. To my first love, my mother, on whose knee I learned love lore that is not troublesome, whose service is my special dignity, and she my lodestar while I go and come. And so, because you love me, and because I love you, mother, I have woven a wreath of rhymes wherewith to crown your honored name. In you not fourscore years can dim the flame of love, whose blessed glow transcends the laws of time and change and mortal life and death. All right. And next up, we have a wonderful excerpt from my good friend Mallory Hallworth that I'll let her introduce for all of you. So Mallory, whenever you're ready, take it away.
I will be reading an excerpt from Anne of Green Gables, the story of Anne Shirley, an 11-year-old orphan who gets placed with the siblings Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert. Chapter 6, Marilla makes up her mind. It seems there's been a mistake about this little girl, Miss Blewett, she said. I was under the impression that Mr. and Miss Cuthbert wanted a little girl to adopt. I was certainly told so, but it seems it was a boy they wanted. So if you're still on the same mind you were yesterday, I think she'll be just the thing for you. Miss Blewett darted her eyes over Anne from head to foot. How old are you and what's your name? She demanded. Anne Shirley, faltered the young girl, not daring to make any stipulations regarding the spelling thereof. And I'm 11 years old. You don't look as if there's much to you, but you're wiry. I don't know, but the wiry ones are always the best after all. Well, if I take you, you'll have to be a good girl, you know, good and smart and respectful. I'll expect you to earn your keep and make no mistake about that. Yes, I suppose I might as well take you off her hands, Mrs. Cuthbert. The baby's awful fractious, and I'm clean worn out after attending to him. If you like, I can take her home right now. Marilla looked at Anne and softened at the sight of the child's pale face with its look of mute misery, the misery of a helpless little creature who finds itself once more caught in the trap from which it had escaped. Marilla felt an uncomfortable conviction that, if she denied the appeal of that look, it would haunt her to her dying day. Moreover, she did not fancy Miss Blewett. To hand a sensitive, high-strung child over to such a woman, she could not take the responsibility of doing that. Well, I don't know, she said slowly. I didn't say that Matthew and I had absolutely decided that we wouldn't keep her. In fact, I might say that Matthew was disposed to keep her. I just came over to find out how the mistake had occurred. I think I'd better take her home again and talk it over with Matthew. I feel that I oughtn't to decide on anything without consulting him. If we make up our mind not to keep her, we'll bring her over to you tomorrow night. If we don't, then you know that she'll stay with us. Will that suit you, Miss Blewett? I suppose it'll have to, said Miss Blewett ungraciously. During Marilla's speech, a sunrise had been dawning on Anne's face. First, the look of despair faded out. Then came a faint flush of hope. Her eyes grew deep and bright as morning stars. The child was quite transfigured. And, a moment later, when Mrs. Spencer and Mrs. Blewett went out in quest of recipe the latter had come to borrow, she sprang up and flew across the room to Marilla. Oh, Miss Cuthbert, did you really say that perhaps you'd let me stay at Green Gables? She said in a breathless whisper, as if speaking aloud might shatter the glorious possibility. Did you really say it, or did I only imagine that you did? I think you'd better learn to control that imagination of yours, Anne, if you can't distinguish between what is real and what isn't, said Marilla crossly. Yes, you did hear me say just that and no more. It isn't decided yet, and perhaps we will conclude to let Miss Blewett take you after all. She certainly needs you much more than I do. I'd rather go back to the asylum than go live with her, said Anne passionately. She looks exactly like a gimlet. Marilla smothered a smile under the conviction that Anne must be reproved for such a speech. A little girl like you should be ashamed of talking so about a lady and a stranger, she said severely. Go back and sit down quietly and hold your tongue and behave as a good girl should. I'll try to do and be anything you want if only you'll keep me, said Anne, returning meekly to the ottoman. When they arrived back at Green Gables that evening, Matthew met them in the lane. Marilla said from afar, and had noted him prowling along it and guessed his motive. She was prepared for the relief she read in his face when he saw that she had at least brought Anne back with her. But she said nothing to him relative to the affair until they were both out in the yard behind the barn milking cows. Then she briefly told him Anne's history and the result of the interview with Mrs. Spencer. I wouldn't give a dog I liked to that Blewett woman, said Matthew with unusual vim. I don't fancy her style myself, admitted Marilla, but it's that or keeping her ourselves, Matthew. And since you seem to want her, I suppose I'm willing, or have to be. I've been thinking over the idea until I've gotten kind of used to it. It seems a sort of duty. I've never brought up a child, especially a girl, and I dare say I'll make a terrible mess of it, but I'll do my best. So far as I'm concerned, Matthew, she may stay. The next excerpt comes just after the death of Matthew. Chapter 37, The Reaper Whose Name is Death. Then the tears came and Anne wept her heart out. Marilla heard her and crept in to comfort her. There, don't cry so, dearie. It can't bring him back. It isn't right to cry so. I knew that today, but I couldn't help it then. He'd always been such a good and kind brother of me, but God knows best. Oh, just let me cry, Marilla sobbed Anne. The tears don't hurt me like that ache did. Stay here for a little while with me and keep your arm around me. So, I couldn't have Diana stay. She's good and kind and sweet, but it's not her sorrow. She's outside of it, and she couldn't come close enough to my heart to help me. It's our sorrow, yours and mine. Oh, Marilla, what will we do without him? We've got each other, Anne. I don't know what I'd do if you weren't here, if you'd never come. Oh, Anne, I know I've been kind of strict and harsh with you, maybe, but you mustn't think that I didn't love you as well as Matthew did. For all that, I want to tell you now that when I can. It's never been easy on me for me to say these things out of my heart, but at times like this, it's easier. I love you as dear as if you were my own flesh and blood, and you've been my joy and comfort ever since you've come to Green Gables. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mallory, for that story or that excerpt that in particularly honored adoptive mothers. That was lovely. Thank you. And next up, we have a poem from another one of my very good friends, Bailey Roberts. So Bailey, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Hello, I will be reading a poem called My Mother by Anne Taylor, who fed me from her gentle breast and hushed me in her arms to rest, and on my cheek sweet kisses pressed, my mother. When sleep forsook my open eye, who was it sung sweet hush-a-bye, and rocked me that I should not cry, my mother. Who sat and watched my infant head when sleeping in my cradle bed, and tears of sweet affection shed, my mother. When pain and sickness made me cry, who gazed upon my heavy eye, and wept for fear that I should die, my mother. Who dressed my doll in clothes so gay, and taught me pretty how to play, and minded all I had to say, my mother. Who taught my infant lips to pray, and love God's holy book and day, and walk in wisdom's pleasant way, my mother. And can I ever cease to be affectionate and kind to thee, who was so very kind to me, my mother? Ah, no, the thought I cannot bear, and if God please my life to spare, I hope I shall reward thy care, my mother. Who ran to help me when I fell, or would some pretty story tell, or kiss the place to make it well, my mother. When thou art feeble, old, and gray, my healthy arm shall be thy stay, and I shall soothe thy pains away, my mother. And when I see thee hang thy head, 'twill be my turn to watch thy bed, and tears of sweet affection shed, my mother. For could our Father in the skies look down with pleased or loving eyes, if ever I should dare despise my mother?
Wonderful, Bailey. Thank you so much. That was lovely. And next up, we have one of my other very, very, very good friends, Hannah Davies, who will be reading a story for you. So Hannah, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Why the Ivy is Always Green by Madge Bingham. There were two small plants that grew on the edge of a rough red ditch. One of them was an ivy plant and the other a tiny fig tree. It was early in the morning when they first awoke and looked around to see how they liked the world. I think it is an ugly old world, said the young fig tree. I see only a rough red ditch with dirty water flowing below. Oh, it is a beautiful world, replied the ivy vine. I see clouds floating on high, and sunshine, and such lovely trees and flowers growing over on the other side of this ditch. Let us try to make this side beautiful too. I will cover the rough red places with pretty green leaves, and you can decorate with your wonderful pink blossoms. Come, let us try. No, said the small fig tree. I would not waste my time trying to make this ugly old place beautiful. Now if, like my mother, I could have grown in the soft, rich earth of the garden, I would have tried to do something, but here there is no use. So, from day to day, the little fig tree grumbled. Nothing pleased her. If the sun shone, she said it was too hot. If the rain fell, she said it was too wet. And if the wind blew, she said it was too cold. But the little ivy vine, it was very different, and she was as happy as a lark from early morning until night. Whether the sun shines or whether the rain falls, it is God's will, said the little vine, and I am well pleased. I shall do all I can do to make my side of this ditch beautiful, and I shall begin today." And so she did. Though she lived only on the edge of the red ditch, she spread her leaves day by day, running here and there and yonder, hiding this red spot and that red spot, until by and by nothing could be seen but the beautiful green leaves of the ivy. And she did not stop until every ugly red spot was hidden by her graceful garlands. "Oh, it is beautiful, beautiful now," cried the ivy. "Only look." "Yes," said the fig tree crossly, "but no one sees it. What are you going to do now? Dry up, I suppose, since you can never cross the ditch?" "Oh, but I shall cross the ditch," said the ivy vine. "I shall keep on trying until I do. There is so much on the other side I can do to help make the earth world beautiful. Surely there is a way to cross." So she ran out little tendrils, reaching here and there, searching everywhere for a way to climb down the edge of the ditch. And at last, by climbing down to the edge of the muddy water, she reached a rock halfway across, where she stopped for a moment to rest and wonder what next to do. "You'll never get across," laughed the fig tree. "I told you so. You might as well make up your mind to drive now and stop trying." "I shall never stop trying," called back the ivy vine. "There is a way to cross all ditches, and I shall cross this one. Just you wait and see." "Bravo, my pretty one," said the voice of the old oak tree close by. "Cling to my roots there. I am old and worn, but it is a joy to help one like you reach out, and I will pull you up." So, with one huge stretch, the ivy vine clung tightly to the twisted roots of the old oak, and was soon laughing merrily on the other side. "Dear me, but you are a brave little vine," said the old oak. "I've been watching you across this ditch all these months, and you've changed its ugly red banks into a thing of real beauty. Now there was a time once when flowers and grass grew there, and ferns fringed the edge of the brook, and it was beautiful indeed. Every fall I shook out armfuls of crimson and yellow leaves upon the bank, but that was long ago, before the great forest fire robbed me of my limbs and leaves, and left me old and worn. What a joy it would be to me if only I might have my branches decked in leaves one more time. Especially do I long for this in the glad springtime, when trees and flowers are robing themselves for the joyous Easter day. Sad, indeed, it is to me to know that I shall be clothed no more in a fresh dress of delicate green, like your own pretty leaves, dear ivy." "But you shall," said the ivy vine, clapping her hands. "You have helped me cross the ditch today, and I mean to give you an Easter dress. Watch me." Now, vines had never climbed high before this. They had only run along the ground and down the hill and over walls. But this little ivy vine wrapped her delicate arms around the rough bark of the old tree and began to climb her first tree. She pulled and stretched and pulled until, little by little, higher and higher she went, leaving a trail of rich green leaves behind her. It was a lovely sight. "See," she called to the old oak, "I am bringing you the most beautiful Easter dress. How do you like it?" "Beautiful, beautiful," laughed the old oak. "You make me feel young again. But what will you do when you reach my branches?" "Why, I shall keep on climbing," replied the ivy vine. "When I give a dress at all, it must be a whole dress, don't you know? I shall not stop until I have covered every branch as I did that bare spots on the ditch." And so she did. Every day she climbed a little higher until by and by every limb on the great old oak was completely hidden by the beautiful leaves of the ivy. The old oak laughed in delight as she looked on her beautiful Easter dress of fresh, rich green. Now, the queen of the fairies, who I told you was always on the watch for beautiful deeds, stood under the old oak on Easter day and wondered at the beautiful sight. It made her glad to see the old oak in her new dress, and of course she knew who had given it. So turning with a smile to the ivy vine, she said, "Because you have tried to make others happy, and to make the earth beautiful, your leaves shall never fade. Forever and forever they shall stay beautiful and green. Cold shall not hurt them, nor summer's heat destroy them. And wherever you may go, you shall gladden the hearts of men with your freshness and beauty. Very happy indeed did those words make the pretty ivy vine. And ever since, she has been climbing over the earth world, hunting bare places to make more beautiful. Stone walls and churches and houses, no place seems too high for her to climb, and never does she weary in making fresh Easter dresses for the trees that are old and worn and cannot make them for themselves.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for reading that piece that also celebrated the season of spring. So thank you so much. That was lovely. All right, and next up we have Bailey Roberts coming back to read another poem for us. So Bailey, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right, I will be reading Mother, a poem by Lola Ridge. Your love was like moonlight, turning harsh things to beauty, so that little rice souls, reflecting each other obliquely, as in cracked mirrors, beheld in your luminous spirit their own reflection, transfigured as in a shining stream, and loved you for what they are not. You are less an image in my mind than a luster. I see you in gleams, pale as starlight on a gray wall, evanescent as the reflection of a white swan shimmering in broken water.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, next up we have, I keep saying my very good friends. These guys are all my very good friends. They're all lovely. But next up we have one of my good friends, Olivia Jump, reading a short story for you. So Olivia, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Hello, I'm going to be reading The Little Acorn by Lucy Wheelock. It was a little acorn that hung on the bough of a tree. It had a tender green cup and a beautifully carved saucer to hold it. The mother oak fed it with sweet sap every day, and the birds sang goodnight songs above it, and the wind rocked it gently to and fro. The oak leaves made a soft green shade above it, so the sun could not shine too warm on its green cover, and it was as happy as an acorn could be. There were many other acorns living on the tree, and I am sure the mother often whispered loving words to all her babies. The summer days were so bright and pleasant that the acorn never thought of anything but sunshine and an occasional shower to wash the dust off the leaves. But you know that summer ends and autumn days come. The green cup of the acorn turned to a brown cup, and it was well that it grew stiffer and harder, for the cold winds began to blow. The leaves turned from green to golden brown, and some of them were whisked away by the rough wind. The little acorn began to grow uneasy. "Isn't life all summer?" it said. "No," whispered the mother oak. "The cold days come, and the leaves must go, and the acorns too. I must soon lose my babies." "Oh, I could never leave this kind bough," said the frightened acorn. "I should be lost and forgotten if I were to fall." So it tried to cling all the closer to its bough, but at last it was alone there. The leaves were blown away, and some of them had made a blanket for the brown acorns lying on the ground. One night the tree whispered this message to the lonely acorn: "This tree is only your home for a time. This is not your true life. Your brown shell is only the cover for a living plant, which can never be set free until the hard shell drops away, and that can never happen until you are buried in the ground and wait for the spring to call you into life. So let go, little acorn, and fall to the ground, and someday you will wake to a new and glorious life." The acorn listened and believed, for was not the tree its sheltering mother? So it bade her farewell, and, losing its hold, dropped to the ground. Then, indeed, it seemed as if the acorn were lost. That night a high wind blew and covered it deep under a heap of oak leaves. The next day, a cold rain washed the leaves closer together, and trickling streams from the hillside swept some earth over them. The acorn was buried. But I shall wake again, it said, and so it fell asleep. It might have been cold, but the frost fairies wove a soft white snow blanket to cover it, and so it was kept warm. If you had walked through the woods that winter, you would have said that the acorn was gone, but then you could not have seen the life slumbering within the brown cover. But spring came and called to all the sleeping things underground to waken and come forth. The acorn heard and tried to move, but the brown shell held it fast. Some raindrops trickled through the ground to moisten the shell, and one day the pushing life within was set free. The brown shell was of no more use and was lost in the ground, but the young plant was to live. It heard voices calling it upward. It must arise. A new and glorious life, the mother oak had said. I must arise, the acorn said, and up the living plant came, up to the world of sunshine and beauty. It looked around. There was the same green moss in the woods, the same singing brook. And I shall live and grow, it said. Yes, called the mother oak, you are now an oak tree. This is your real life. And the tiny oak tree was glad and tried to stretch higher towards the sun.
Thank you so much, Olivia. That was wonderful. And next up, we have Hannah Davies coming back to read another very special poem for you. So Hannah, whenever you're ready, take it away.
This poem is entitled, My Mother Kept a Garden. My mother kept a garden of the heart. She planted all the good things that gave my life its start. She turned me to the sunshine and encouraged me to dream, fostering and nurturing the seeds of self-esteem. And when the wind came, and the rain too, she protected me enough, but not too much, because she knew I'd need to stand up strong and tough. Her constant good example always taught me right from wrong, markers for my pathway that will last a lifetime long. I'm my mother's garden. I'm her legacy. And I hope today she feels the love reflected back from me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And next up, we have Olivia Jump returning to read another little short story about spring for you. So Olivia, whenever you're ready.
I'm going to be reading The Legend of the Forget-Me-Not by Ada M. Skinner. There once was a little plant that grew by a shady brook. It had many companions even in this quiet spot. The great branches of the old tree stretched over it, and the beautiful flowers were friendly, but it did not seem happy. The flowers often thought they heard it sigh as its head drooped almost to the ground. How I wish I might have flowers like the other plants, it said to itself. Blue ones, the color of the beautiful sky. There is so much blue, surely some could be spared for the earth. Then the children would not always need to look up to see the sky. But it kept its secret close to its heart and only bent its head a little lower. What makes you droop so, little plant? Asked one of the flowers. Your leaves are quite down again. Surely the sun is not too warm here. Tell us, said the others. Perhaps we can be of some help to you. We want to see you look up again at the sky as you used to. It would be of no use to tell you, answered the little plant. I have often whispered my secret to the old tree as its branches swayed near me, but it all has been of no use. And its head bent lower and lower. Perhaps, said the flowers to each other, perhaps our angel can be of some help. Let us speak to her. And when the evening came, and the angel closed the flowers as she kissed them goodnight, she heard one whisper, Something makes our little friend very sad. She will not tell us. See if she will tell you her secret. They saw the angel stoop down and whisper something to the little plant and go away. See how our little companion has raised its head this morning, said the grasses. An angel visited her last night, one answered. By and by, a day came when the little plant was covered with many tiny blossoms. The other flowers rejoiced to see them. We've guessed your secret. What beautiful flower, children, blue like the sky. It makes the sky seem very near. That is my secret, answered the little plant. When I told it to the angel, I said, my flowers must just be the color of the sky. And she whispered, then always look up, for your flowers will be like that which you love most. Then she went away. The forget-me-not was happy. She never drooped her head again, and the angel always kissed her good night as she passed by.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Olivia. That was lovely. And last up, for our final story, we have an excerpt from Little Women that I'll be reading for you. So I have a couple of mini excerpts here. The first excerpt that I'd like to open with is a quote from around the middle of the text, and it reads, "They always looked back before turning the corner, for their mother was always at the window to nod and smile and wave her hand to them. Somehow, it seemed as if they couldn't have got through the day without that, for whatever their mood might be, the last glimpse of that motherly face was sure to affect them like sunshine." And the next excerpt that I have is from, I believe, a little later on in the book. And this happens where Amy, one of the March daughters, she falls into a frozen lake and almost drowns, but Joe and Lori are able to rescue her and bring her home. And this is a conversation between Joe and her mother, Marmee, after Amy is brought home. "Are you sure she is safe?" whispered Joe, looking remorsefully at the golden head, which might have been swept away from her sight forever under the treacherous ice. "Quite safe, dear. She is not hurt and won't even take cold. I think you were so sensible in covering and getting her home quickly," replied her mother cheerfully. "Lori did it all. I only let her go. Mother, if she should die, it would be my fault." And Joe dropped down beside the bed in a passion of penitent tears, telling all that had happened, bitterly condemning her hardness of heart, and sobbing out her gratitude for being spared the heavy punishment which might have come upon her. "It's my dreadful temper. I try to cure it, I think I have, and then it breaks out worse than ever. Oh, mother, what shall I do? What shall I do?" cried poor Joe in despair. "Watch and pray, dear. Never get tired of trying, and never think it is impossible to conquer your fault," said Mrs. March, drawing the blowsy head to her shoulder and kissing the wet cheek so tenderly that Joe cried even harder. "You don't know, you can't guess how bad it is. It seems as if I could do anything when I'm in a passion. I get so savage I could hurt anyone and enjoy it. I'm afraid I shall do something dreadful someday and spoil my life and make everybody hate me. Oh, mother, help me, do help me." "I will, my child, I will. Don't cry so bitterly, but remember this day, and resolve with all your soul that you will never know another like it. Joe, dear, we all have our temptations, some far greater than yours, and it often takes us all our lives to conquer them. You think your temper is the worst in the world, but mine used to be just like it." "Yours, mother? Why, you are never angry." And for the moment, Joe forgot remorse in surprise. "I've been trying to cure it for 40 years and have only succeeded in controlling it. I am angry nearly every day of my life, Joe, but I have learned not to show it, and I still hope to learn not to feel it, though it may take me another 40 years to do so." The patience and the humility of the face she loved so well was a better lesson to Joe than the wisest lecture, than the sharpest reproof. She felt comforted at once by the sympathy and confidence given her. The knowledge that her mother had a fault like hers and tried to mend it made her own easier to bear and strengthened her resolution to cure it, though 40 years seemed rather a long time to watch and pray to a girl of 15. Mother, are you angry when you fold your lips tight together and go out of the room sometimes when Aunt March scolds or people worry you? Asked Jo, feeling nearer and dearer to her mother than ever before. Yes, I've learned to check the hasty words that rise to my lips, and when I feel that they mean to break out against my will, I just go away for a minute and give myself a little shake for being so weak and wicked, answered Mrs. March with a sigh and a smile as she smoothed and fastened up Jo's disheveled hair. How did you learn to keep still? That is what troubles me, for the sharp words fly out before I know what I'm about, and the more I say, the worse I get, till it's a pleasure to hurt people's feelings and say dreadful things. Tell me how you do it, Marmee dear. My good mother used to help me. As you do us, interrupted Jo with a grateful kiss. But I lost her when I was a little older than you are, and for years had to struggle on alone, for I was too proud to confess my weakness to anyone else. I had a hard time, Jo, and shed a good many bitter tears over my failures, for in spite of my efforts, I never seemed to get on. Then your father came, and I was so happy that I found it easy to be good. But by and by, when I had 4 little daughters round me, and we were poor, then the old trouble began again, for I am not patient by nature, and it tried me very much to see my children wanting anything. Poor mother, what helped you then? Your father, Jo. He never loses patience, never doubts or complains, but always hopes and works and waits so cheerfully that one is ashamed to do otherwise before him. He helped and comforted me and showed me that I must try to practice all the virtues I would have my little girls possess, for I was their example. It was easier to try for your sakes than for my own. A startled or surprised look from one of you when I spoke sharply rebuked me more than any words could have done, and the love, respect, and confidence of my children was the sweetest reward I could receive for my efforts to be the woman I would have them copy. Oh, mother, if I'm ever half as good as you, I shall be satisfied, cried Jo, much touched. I hope you will be a great deal better, dear, but you must keep watch over your bosom enemy, as father calls it, or it may sadden, if not spoil, your life. You have had a warning. Remember it, and try with all your heart and soul to master this quick temper before it brings you greater sorrow and regret than you have known today. I will try, mother, I truly will, but you must help me, remind me, and keep me from flying out. I used to see father sometimes put his finger on his lips and look at you with a very kind but sober face, and you always folded your lips tight and went away. Was he reminding you then? Asked Jo softly. Yes. I asked him to help me, and he never forgot it, but saved me from many a sharp word by that little gesture and kind look. Jo saw that her mother's eyes filled and her lips trembled as she spoke, and fearing that she had said too much, she whispered anxiously, Was it wrong to watch you and to speak of it? I didn't mean to be rude, but it's so comfortable to say all I think to you and feel so safe and happy here. My Jo, you may say anything to your mother, for it is my greatest happiness and pride to feel that my girls confide in me and know how much I love them. I thought I'd grieved you. No, dear, but speaking of father reminded me how much I miss him, how much I owe him, and how faithfully I should watch and work to keep our little daughters safe and good for him. Yet you told him to go, mother, and didn't cry when he went, and never complain now or seem as if you needed any help, said Jo, wondering. I gave my best to the country I love and kept my tears till he was gone. Why should I complain, when we both have merely done our duty and will surely be the happier for it in the end? If I don't seem to need help, it is because I have a better friend, even than father, to comfort and sustain me. My child, the troubles and temptations of your life are beginning and may be many, but you can overcome and outlive them all if you learn to feel the strength and tenderness of your heavenly Father as you do that of your earthly one. The more you love and trust him, the nearer you will feel to him, and the less you will depend on human power and wisdom. His love and care never tire or change, can never be taken from you, but may become the source of lifelong peace, happiness, and strength. Believe this heartily and go to God with all your little cares and hopes and sins and sorrows as freely and confidingly as you come to your mother. Thank you so much. That is the last of our readings for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. But before we leave, we wanted to take a moment to honor all of our own mothers. Because I know we just read several fictional stories and excerpts and poems to honor mothers in general, but we all felt that our mothers were so amazing that they deserved an extra special shout out. So with that being said, if you'll just give me a moment, I'm going to pull up a slideshow that our group made to honor our mothers in particular. So again, thank you so much to all of our amazing mothers out there. We wish you the very happiest of Mother's Days. And please know that we love you so much, and that even though we read all of these stories to honor you, you all are so much better than all of these fictional mothers put together. Thank you so much, and we love you. Have a wonderful weekend.